Corey Brooks was 35 years old, and he believed, the way you believe in gravity or in the sun rising, that his marriage was fine. Not perfect, not electric, but fine. He believed that fine was what 8 years looked like. He believed that silence at the dinner table was just two tired people resting. He believed that if something were truly wrong, my wife would tell him. He was wrong on all 3 counts. The proof was sitting right there on his phone. 412 text messages between his wife, Essie, and a man named Walter Reed, read by Corey alone at 3 in the morning, at a dining table that still smelled like the pot roast Essie had made for dinner. Now here is what makes this story something more than just another betrayal. Corey did not explode, did not call anybody, did not throw a single thing. He just sat there in the dark, a senior software engineer who could debug 10,000 lines of code without flinching, and he read. Every word, every good morning, every inside joke, every moment Walter had said something to his wife that Corey had not said in years. And somewhere around message 217, Corey Brooks realized something that would change everything. He was not just hurt by Walter. He was disappointed in himself. Before we go further into this story, if you have ever loved someone so completely that you forgot to show them, stay with us. Because what happens next is going to stay with you. The night it all came to a head was a Thursday in late October. Atlanta had cooled just enough that a light jacket felt right, and the oak trees lining Peachtree Road had gone from green to a deep, reluctant gold. The kind of evening that feels like a held breath. Corey had made the reservation at Costello's 3 weeks in advance. 8 years of marriage. He had written it in his phone calendar with a small heart, which, if you knew Corey Brooks, told you something. This was not a man who used heart emojis lightly. He arrived early, the way he always did. 15 minutes before anyone else. A habit from years of making sure everything was in order. The host led him to the corner table. Candlelit, white linen. The kind of place that made you lower your voice without being asked. He ordered sparkling water and waited. When Essie walked in, the room shifted a little. She had that effect. 32 years old, her natural hair pinned up, wearing a deep burgundy dress Corey had never seen before. She was beautiful in the way that still surprised him sometimes, even after all these years. She smiled when she saw him. It was warm. But something behind it was careful, like a door held only slightly open. "You look incredible," Corey said. "Thank you." She sat down, unfolded her napkin, glanced at the menu. "How was traffic?" "Fine. How was your day?" "Busy. The Riverbend campaign is in its final push." And just like that, they were in it. The comfortable, efficient rhythm of 2 people who shared a home and a bed and a mortgage, and who had somewhere along the way stopped sharing much else. The waiter came. Essie ordered the salmon. Corey ordered the chicken. The dessert cart rolled past, and he caught a faint whiff of artificial vanilla from the tiramisu. He barely noticed. But he would remember it later, because my wife was allergic to artificial vanilla, and the fact that it had not even registered for him said something he was not yet ready to hear. Essie was talking about the Riverbend campaign again, her voice coming alive the way it always did when she talked about work. Her hands moved, her eyes lit up. She described a concept she had pitched to the executive team, something bold and unconventional. Corey was nodding, but his mind had already drifted to the server outage at work he still had not resolved, the performance review coming up, and the quiet but constant worry that had lived in his chest for 3 years. What if they let him go? "Uh-huh," he said. Essie paused, just barely. then kept going. That was the moment. That single, unremarkable word. Corey would think about it for a long time afterward. How something so small could carry so much weight. But it was not the moment the evening broke open. The breaking came when the waiter brought the champagne Corey had pre-ordered, and Essie lifted her glass, and they were about to toast 8 years when Corey set his wine glass down. His voice was quiet, almost gentle. "Do you love him?" Essie looked up. A flicker of something crossed her face, and she let out a small, awkward laugh. "Who?" "Walter." The word landed like a stone dropped into still water. Essie went completely silent. The champagne flute hovered in the air between them, the bubbles still rising, the liquid trembling because her fingers had begun to shake. She did not speak. She did not deny it. She did not laugh again. Corey reached into his jacket pocket, placed his phone on the white linen tablecloth, and turned the screen toward her. 412 messages. The last one, sent at 11:47 the night before, from Walter. "You always see the beauty in the chaos, Essie. That is why I love working with you." The candle between them flickered once. And Essie Brooks, Senior Marketing Manager, radiant and elegant and careful, could not find a single word. Have you ever felt disconnected inside your own marriage? Drop a comment below. We read every single one. Corey spoke slowly, steadily, the way a man speaks when he has had a week to prepare for a conversation and still is not entirely sure he can get through it. He told Essie how he found out. 7 days ago, a Tuesday night. He had come home late, nearly 11 o'clock, and my wife had already gone to bed. Her laptop was open on the dining table, the screen still glowing. He had meant to close it and go to bed. That was all. A notification appeared before he could. A message preview from someone named W. Campaign. He told himself it was work-related. He almost walked away. But something, he still could not name it, whether instinct or the weight of 1,000 evenings spent half-present, made him stop. He sat down. He read for 4 hours. There was nothing physical between them, Corey said, his voice catching slightly. No meetings outside work at that point. No photographs. You have to understand, there was a part of me that almost found that harder, because what I read was something deeper. Essie's eyes were filling. She still had not spoken. Walter knows you are allergic to artificial vanilla, Corey said. Walter knows you have been reading The Alchemist because you told him you needed to believe again that things happen for a reason. Walter knows you are worried you will never move beyond senior marketing manager. He paused. I did not know any of that, Essie. And I live in the same house as you. The table between them felt about a mile wide. Later that night, after Essie had come home alone, after Corey had sat on the front porch for 2 hours watching the streetlights, after they had agreed not to make a scene at the restaurant, Essie sat on the edge of their bed in the dark. She did not turn on the lamp. She went to the kitchen at some point, opened the refrigerator without knowing what she was looking for, and her eyes landed on a bottle of white wine on the bottom shelf. Corey had bought it for her the previous February, because she had mentioned offhandedly that she had always wanted to try it. She had never opened it. It had sat there for 11 months, a small, forgotten gesture in a green glass bottle. She took it out, sat down on the kitchen floor, and cried. Not politely. The deep, wrung-out kind of crying that comes when you are not sure whether you are mourning a marriage or mourning the version of yourself you lost somewhere inside it. She knew what those messages were. She had searched it herself 2 months ago. The phrase she typed, signs of an emotional connection outside marriage, She had been so unsettled by what she was reading that she forgot to clear the browser history they shared. Corey had found that too. Here is what neither of them said aloud for a long time, but what was true for both of them. The distance had not appeared overnight. It had come in increments, the way a river reshapes a canyon, not by force, but by patience and time. 3 years ago, Corey had written in his journal, "Today, Essie told me about her dream of starting her own agency. She was so lit up about it. I told her I would always support her, whatever she decided. I meant every word." He had meant it, completely. But then the tech industry began shifting. His company went through 2 rounds of workforce reductions. He survived both, but the worry did not leave. It moved in quietly and made itself at home. And the only way Corey knew to manage it was to work. More hours, more projects, more late nights. 70 hours a week. Then 70 became the baseline, and everything outside of work became something he would get back to later. He stopped asking about the agency dream. He stopped asking about a lot of things. And Essie, who was creative, emotionally alive, and needed to feel truly seen the way some people need air, had slowly begun to feel invisible inside a marriage that was stable, comfortable, and almost entirely silent. Enter Walter Reed, a creative strategist at the same company. 34 years old, easy manner, the kind of man who asked real questions and stayed for the answers. He was not pursuing Essie with flattery. He was simply attentive. He remembered things she said. He followed up. One morning he had texted her, "How did the Riverbend pitch go? I know how much you were riding on it." She had stared at that message for a full minute, because Corey had not asked. The difficult conversation came 2 days after the anniversary dinner. The pressure had been building since that Tuesday night at the dining table. Essie stood in the kitchen, her arms crossed, her voice unsteady at the edges. "You asked me how my day was, and then before I finished my first sentence, you were back on your phone, Corey. I have been under pressure about this promotion for months. You did not even notice." Corey opened his mouth, then closed it, because the honest answer was no. He had not noticed. "I have been carrying a lot of worry," he said finally. His voice came out quieter than he intended. "The workforce reductions. 2 rounds, Essie. I buried myself in work because I was scared of losing everything. I thought if I kept the house, kept the bills paid, kept everything secure, I thought that was how I showed up for us." Essie looked at him steadily. "I did not need the security, Corey," she said quietly. "I needed you." The silence after that was the loudest thing in the room. Then came the moment that dropped the floor out from under both of them. The conversation had gone quiet in that exhausted way, and Essie was sitting on the edge of the bed, and Corey was in the doorway, and she said it almost in a whisper. "I actually thought about ending the marriage." Corey did not move. "Not seriously," she added quickly. "I mean, I looked some things up online. I just needed to understand what it would look like. I did not—" She pressed her hand over her mouth. They stood there, 5 feet apart, surrounded by 8 years of furniture and photographs and shared life. And both of them understood, in that moment, that they had come much closer to the edge than either had been willing to admit. It was Corey who spoke first. "I want to try." He said it carefully. "Marriage counseling. I will find someone good." He paused. "If you are willing." Essie looked at him. Her eyes were red. Her answer was not warm or hopeful. She simply said, "Okay." One word, flat and honest and real. She agreed. But her eyes still could not quite hold his. Silence is not peace. In a long marriage, silence is the quietest threat there is. Was this more Essie's fault or Corey's? Tell us in one word below. Dr. Zara Thompson's office was on the 14th floor of a building in Midtown Atlanta, and from the window there was a thin strip of Piedmont Park visible between the neighboring towers. Just a sliver of green, as if the city were reminding you that something living was still out there. Corey had chosen her carefully. 15 years of practice, specializing in couples and communication. Reviews that used words like, "no nonsense," and "she does not let you hide." That last phrase had given him pause. He called anyway. Dr. Zara Thompson was 50 years old and wore it the way certain women do. Not aged, but seasoned. Silver locks, reading glasses on a chain around her neck, and a direct way of looking at a person that made people say things they had not planned to say. Session 1 was ground rules. Session 2 was history. Session 3 was where everything shifted. Corey found the second phone on a Sunday afternoon. He had not been searching for it. He opened their shared email account to print an insurance document and noticed, already sorted but not deleted, a bill from their cellular carrier. One line for Corey, one line for Essie, and a third line he did not recognize. He sat very still for about 30 seconds. Then he called the carrier. The third line had been active for 4 months, charged to a credit card he had never seen. 2 days later, while Essie was in the shower, he found the phone itself, tucked in the side pocket of her gym bag. Simple, prepaid, nearly empty. One contact saved. W. One message remaining in the thread, sent at 1:03 in the morning, 3 weeks prior. I have really valued our conversations. You always bring clarity to everything. The rest of the messages had been removed, but she had kept this one. He brought it to session 3. Not dramatically. He simply placed it on the armrest of his chair and said, I found a second phone. Dr. Zara looked steadily at Essie. She did not shift, did not react. She waited. Essie stared at the phone as though she had hoped it might have disappeared on its own. The hands folded in her lap began to tremble. Essie, Dr. Zara said, her voice calm but without softness at its edges. Is there anything you need to share with us that you have not yet said? The room held its breath. Then, slowly, in pieces, the way a wall comes down after months of pressure, Essie broke. Not quietly, not gracefully. She cried the way people cry when holding everything together has finally become the thing that breaks them. I do not have deep feelings for him. Her voice was raw. I need you to understand that. I do not have deep feelings for Walter. But I let him fill a space. She pressed both hands to her face. A space I did not know how to talk to you about, Corey. I did not know how to say, I feel alone, to the man sleeping next to me. That felt like the most difficult thing in the world to admit. Corey was very still. You had a second phone, Essie, he said. His voice was measured. You cleared those messages. I know. You kept a separate line open for 4 months without telling me. I know. Her voice fractured. I know, Corey. Dr. Zara let the silence sit. Then she spoke. I want to ask you both something, and I need honest answers, not the ones you think you should give. She folded her hands. When did you last feel truly heard in this marriage? Not spoken to, heard. Neither of them answered immediately. Corey thought about it. Really thought. About 3 years ago, he said. Essie nodded, barely. The same. That is not a coincidence, Dr. Zara said. That is a pattern, and patterns do not form overnight. She looked at Corey. You put everything into your work. You told yourself it was for the family. Perhaps that was true. But intent and impact are not the same thing. The impact was that my wife, your wife, felt unseen inside her own home. Corey did not argue. He looked at his hands. And Essie, Dr. Zara's gaze shifted. Instead of telling your husband you were feeling disconnected, instead of saying clearly, I need more from you, you looked for that connection somewhere else. That is not Walter's responsibility. That is a choice you made. Essie wiped her face. I know. Do you? Because knowing and owning are two very different things. After the session, Corey drove. He had no destination. He got onto I-285 and moved through the city, Atlanta passing around him in amber and white light. The radio stayed off. The windows were cracked. He needed the air and the quiet. He thought about what Dr. Zara had said. He thought about the 70-hour weeks, about the worry that had settled into his chest 3 years ago and never left. He had told himself over and over that he was doing it for them, keeping the house, the finances, the future intact. All that time, Essie had been sitting across from him at the dinner table, slowly feeling invisible inside a marriage that was still technically standing. He had been so focused on not losing everything that he had not noticed he was already losing her. He pulled off near Tucker, sat in a gas station parking lot, and put his face in his hands. Not crying, just sitting with it. The part that was not Walter's responsibility. The part that belonged entirely to him. When he got home, the house was quiet. Essie was at the kitchen table with a cup of tea she was not drinking. She looked up when he came in. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Then Corey said it. His voice was unsteady in a way she had not heard in years. When did I stop listening to you? Not an accusation, a genuine question, directed as much at himself as at her. Essie held his gaze for a long time. I do not know the exact moment, she said quietly, but I remember when I stopped expecting you to. That landed somewhere deep and true. He sat down across from her, at the kitchen table where they had eaten 1,000 ordinary meals, in the house they had built a life inside. And he looked at the woman he had gradually, without meaning to, stopped truly seeing. I do not want to lose you, he said. I need you to know that. Essie's eyes welled up again. We still have sessions. I know. You have to actually be there, Corey, not just in the room. I understand that now. They did not reach across the table. They did not embrace. But they stayed, both of them, in the same space, choosing not to leave. For a marriage that had been quietly retreating for 3 years, that was no small thing. If your partner came home one day and asked, "When did I stop listening to you?" what would your answer be? Share your story below. There is a particular kind of quiet that settles over a house, when two people are holding everything together by sheer willpower, and neither one is entirely sure it is working. Corey knew that quiet well by session 4. They were still sleeping in the same bed, still eating dinner together most evenings, still showing up to Dr. Zara's office on Thursday nights, doing all the outward things that said, "We are trying." But there were moments, a pause too long before answering a simple question, a glance that shifted just slightly too fast, when Corey felt how fragile all of it was. like they had assembled a temporary shelter and were both pretending it was a home. He had stopped checking her phone. He made that decision deliberately. Either they were going to rebuild trust, or they were not. And monitoring her messages every night would not rebuild anything. What he did instead was return to his own journal. 3 years of entries, mostly work frustrations and small observations jotted down during sleepless nights. He scrolled back to the earliest ones and found a different version of himself in those pages. A man who noticed things. Essie talked about starting her own agency again tonight. She has a name picked out already. ESI Creative. I told her I would always support whatever she decided. I meant every word. He sat with that last line. I told her I would always support her. He had said it. He had meant it. He had completely let it go. Session 5 fell on a Thursday evening in November, the kind of night when Atlanta's cold finally arrived. Not with drama, but with quiet insistence. Corey wore his jacket. Essie wore the burgundy scarf he had given her 2 Christmases ago, and he noticed that, though he was not yet sure what it meant. They settled into their chairs. Dr. Zara poured water, adjusted her glasses, and looked at both of them with that unhurried patience of hers. Essie, she said, there is something you have not said yet. It was not a question. Essie's hands went still in her lap. How do you know? Corey asked. Because there always is, Dr. Zara said simply. And I can see her carrying it. The room was very quiet. Essie looked at her scarf, then at the window, then at the floor. Then she said it. 4 months ago, I scheduled a consultation with a family law attorney. The air shifted in the room. Corey's jaw tightened, not with anger immediately, but with something colder. The full understanding of exactly how close they had come. I did not follow through, Essie said quickly. I sat in the waiting room, and I left before they even called my name. I kept thinking about what it would mean for our family. I was afraid, so I left. But you drove there, Corey said. His voice was quiet and steady. My wife drove to a family law office. Yes. While we were still coming home to the same house every night. Yes. He stood, walked to the window, stood with his back to both of them, watching the dark street and the blurred yellow of passing headlights. Dr. Zara let it sit. After a long moment, she spoke. Corey, I need you to stay in the room. He turned around slowly and sat back down. What she is describing, Dr. Zara said, is a woman who was in enough pain that she was quietly considering a way out, and who did not feel safe enough to bring that to you. Both of those things matter. Her pain matters, and the fact that she could not bring it to you matters just as much. She paused. This is not about blame right now. It is about understanding what this marriage had become for her. Corey looked at Essie. Why did you not just tell me? His voice softened on the last word. Even then, you could have said, Corey, I am struggling. I would have... You would have what? Essie asked. Her voice was not sharp. It was genuinely uncertain. You were already exhausted every single day. You came home and went straight to your laptop. What would you have actually done differently? He opened his mouth. He did not have a clean answer. Dr. Zara asked Corey to read something aloud from her notes. A message Walter had once sent to Essie from the original set of messages Corey had read that first sleepless night. He looked at the page. His voice was steady, but only just. You deserve someone who truly sees you, Essie. Silence. Dr. Zara watched his face. "Those words," she said gently. "Do they sound familiar to you?" Corey frowned. "What do you mean?" "Essie," Dr. Zara turned to her. "Did Corey ever say something like that to you, early in your relationship?" Essie went very still. "The night we got engaged," she said softly. "Almost those exact words." Corey stared at the page. "Walter did not create something new," Dr. Zara said. "He echoed what had gone missing. What your husband once gave you, and somewhere along the way stopped giving." She let that settle. "That is not Walter's achievement. That is a reminder of what this marriage is capable of being." Then came the moment that had been waiting in the room since the session began. Corey had, days earlier, used a data recovery tool to restore deleted files from Essie's phone. He had not told her. He was not entirely sure whether it was the right call, but he needed to understand the full picture. He brought a printed summary of what he found. He placed it on the coffee table between them. Essie's hand rose to her mouth. "You met with him 4 separate times," Corey said. "Not once. The first time was coffee. There were 3 more after that." Essie closed her eyes. "The last time was 3 weeks ago, a private dinner. It lasted 3 hours." "Corey," "You laughed." His voice broke just slightly. "In the messages around it, you told him it was the first time you had truly laughed in 2 years. He pressed his palms flat on his thighs. 2 years, Essie, and I had no idea." "He asked me," Essie whispered, "what I would name my agency if I ever started it." A simple question, asked by someone else. The question Corey had once promised he would always care about, and had completely let go. He sat back, his voice barely audible. "You chose that connection 4 times while I was still under the impression that we were okay." No one spoke. Dr. Zara said, "Let us take 5 minutes." When they returned to their seats, Essie reached for her phone reflexively, then froze. A message had come through. She turned the screen toward the room without being asked. It was from Walter, sent 2 days prior. "I have developed real feelings for you, Essie. I think you deserve more than what you have. I want to be that for you." Corey rose to his feet. His chair shifted across the hardwood floor. The sound of it, sharp, unplanned, cut through the silence. 3 full seconds. Nobody moved. Essie's hands were shaking. She set the phone down carefully on the cushion and pressed both palms over her face. "I had notifications silenced from him last week," she said, her voice barely holding. "But I had not cut off the contact entirely." A quiet breath. "Because if I did that completely, I told myself it meant there was no going back." "Back to him?" Corey asked. "Back from the decision." She shook her head slowly. "If that door was still open, I had not yet had to choose." She looked at Corey, her eyes honest and exhausted in equal measure. "I realized something," she whispered. "A strong relationship is not about never having distance between you. It is about choosing to close that distance together, even when you are tired, even when it is easier not to." The room held that. Corey sat back down. He did not speak right away. He just looked at my wife, the woman he had gradually, without meaning to, stopped fully seeing. And he made a decision. Not with a speech, not with a declaration. He simply stayed in the room. Have you ever stayed when walking away would have been so much easier? Tell us your story in the comments. Some moments do not announce themselves. They do not arrive with music or revelation. or the dramatic clarity you have been waiting for. They simply arrive, small and unremarkable, and completely undeniable. And you either move toward them or you do not. For Corey and Essie Brooks, the moment came right there in Dr. Zara Thompson's office, with the city of Atlanta humming 14 floors below and Walter's message still visible on the cushion. Essie slid off the couch, not gradually. She simply lowered herself to the floor in front of Corey's chair. She did not plan it. She did not say anything first. Her whole body folded inward in an act of raw, unguarded honesty that even Dr. Zara had not anticipated. She was crying, in that quiet, hollow way that follows the loudest grief, when the storm has already passed and only the stillness remains. Corey looked at her for a long moment. Then he picked up her phone. He found Walter's contact, turned the screen toward Essie, and held it out to her. "You do it," he said, "not because I am asking. Because if you do not mean it, it does not mean anything." Her hands were still trembling, but she took the phone. She opened the contact. She removed it completely, and then she blocked the number. 4 seconds of action that had taken months to reach. Dr. Zara, for the first time, allowed herself a quiet exhale. The following Saturday, rain had been falling over Atlanta all day in that steady, patient way. Corey and Essie stood in the small backyard behind their house. Corey held a metal bowl from the kitchen. Essie held a folded printout, a selection of the messages. Not all of them, just the ones that had been read too many times already. They let the paper burn. They did not say much. The paper caught quickly, went amber and dark at the edges, curled inward. The smell of it, damp soil and something faint from the ink, rose through the rain, and Corey watched the last of it turn to ash, and something in his chest released. Not everything, but enough. "We should make some rules," Essie said quietly. "Okay," he said. They went inside, made tea, and sat at the kitchen table. The same table where the laptop had been opened that Tuesday night. The same table where they had shared 10,000 ordinary dinners without truly seeing each other. And they wrote it out together on a single sheet of paper. No phones at the dinner table. 30 minutes of real conversation every evening. No topic too small. No subject avoided. No judgment. A shared journal. 1 entry each, 3 times a week, left on the counter for the other to read. They were not grand gestures. They were small, daily choices to stop drifting away from each other. The first few weeks were imperfect. They had forgotten, somewhat, how to talk without a counselor in the room. Some of the 30-minute conversations stretched to 5 minutes of real exchange and 25 minutes of comfortable quiet. But they kept showing up for it. Corey began asking about the Riverbend campaign in full sentences, with follow-up questions, the way a person asks when they genuinely want to know. One evening, Essie was describing a difficult presentation, and he leaned forward and said, "Wait, so what did you do?" With such genuine curiosity that she stopped mid-sentence and laughed. "I am afraid you will get bored," she said. He shook his head. "I will not ever get bored again." She did not fully believe it yet, but she was glad he had said it. And Corey, for his part, opened a door he had kept shut for 3 years. He told Essie about the worry, the specific grinding anxiety of watching 2 rounds of workforce reductions pass through his company, of performance reviews, of the persistent sense that one difficult quarter could end everything he had built. He told her how that worry had taken over the parts of him that used to be present and curious, and had left behind a man who said, "Uh-huh," and stared at a screen. My wife listened. She did not interrupt. She did not minimize it. When he finished, she said quietly, "I did not know it was that heavy." "I did not tell you," he said. "I thought providing for the family and opening up to you were the same thing." "They are not," she said. "No," he agreed. "They are not." At their final formal session with Dr. Zara, not because the work was done, but because they were ready to carry it forward themselves, Dr. Zara offered them something to hold on to. "You are not starting from zero," she said. "People who start from zero have nothing to build on. You have 8 years of knowing each other. Shared history, shared language, a life that actually means something. What you are doing now is repairing a structure that developed cracks. And when a structure is repaired properly, when you do the real work instead of simply covering things over, it becomes stronger at those very points." She looked at both of them. Forgiveness is not a destination. You do not arrive at it and stay. Forgiveness is the choice you make each morning to face the day together. Even the difficult mornings, especially those. She set her notebook aside. "Come back in 3 months," she said quietly, "and tell me how things are holding." They walked out into the Atlanta afternoon side by side, close enough that their shoulders touched. It was a small thing, but small things, they were beginning to remember, were where most of love actually lived. What is one small thing your partner did that made you feel truly seen? Share it below. We read every comment. Savannah in April is one of those places that makes you believe things are possible again. The Spanish moss and the live oaks along the waterfront drifts in the sea breeze like something half dreaming. The cobblestone streets hold the evening light in a way that slows a person down. The air carries salt and old wood and something flowering that you cannot quite name. Corey had planned the trip the same way he had planned their anniversary dinner, carefully, ahead of time, with the quiet conviction of a man who had learned, hard and late, that intention matters. He booked the hotel 6 weeks out. He researched restaurants. And this time, he confirmed with the hotel kitchen that nothing on the in-room menu contained artificial vanilla. He mentioned it to Essie when they arrived. She looked at him for a moment, something soft and complicated moving across her face. "You remembered," she said. "I am paying attention now," he said simply. They spent 2 days walking. Through Forsyth Park, where a man was playing saxophone near the fountain and a small crowd had gathered without being asked. Down to the riverfront, where cargo ships moved with enormous, unhurried dignity. Through the famous squares, each one framed by old townhouses and live oaks, each one carrying the quiet sense that time moved a little more slowly here. They talked. Not the structured 30 minutes, just talked. The way they had when they first met at a conference in Charlotte 11 years earlier, when Corey had walked over and said, with no cleverness at all, "I have spent 10 minutes trying to think of something interesting to say, and I have nothing. Can we just talk?" And Essie had laughed, that real, open laugh, and said, "Finally. Someone honest." They laughed about that on the waterfront, talked about the early years, the apartment in Decatur with the broken dishwasher, the neighbor who played smooth jazz every Saturday morning, the road trip to New Orleans that went sideways in 5 separate and memorable ways. They talked about the harder years, too, not to revisit old wounds, but to understand them. The way you trace the shape of something once it is healed. Not because it still hurts, but because knowing its outline is part of knowing yourself. Essie talked about ESI Creative, the agency she still wanted to build. She had been researching quietly. A folder on her laptop. Notes, projections, a logo she had sketched late one night. Corey asked to see it when they returned home. She said, "You might have opinions." He said, "I promise to keep them to myself unless you ask." She laughed, that real laugh. On the second evening, they walked to the beach at sunset. The sky went from blue to gold to the deep, slow amber that settles over open water at the end of a long day. And they stood at the edge of it, waves coming in smooth and even, the light going long across the sand. Corey turned to her. "Do you love him?" The same question. The same voice. The same man who had placed a phone on a white linen tablecloth in a candlelit restaurant and watched my wife go silent. But this time, Essie did not freeze. There was no trembling glass, no terrible pause, no silence louder than words. She smiled. "Only you, Corey," she said. "Only ever you." He put his arm around her. She leaned in close. They stood there watching the light fade over the water, and something that had been long and difficult and genuinely uncertain resolved itself, quietly, without ceremony, into something that felt, for the first time in years, honestly real. A pelican made an undignified landing just down the beach a few minutes later, and they both laughed. Easy, unforced, the kind that comes from two people who are actually present with each other. It had been a long time since that had come so naturally. But here's the truth that Corey carried home with him. Some nights he still woke up. He would lie there in the dark, and my wife would be sleeping beside him, and the memories would return. Not forcefully, but persistently. The messages, the second phone, the 4 meetings, the waiting room she had walked into and then walked out of. The distance that had grown so quietly between them that neither had noticed until they were standing on opposite sides of it. Those nights, he would watch Essie sleep and ask himself the question he suspected he might always be asking. Are these cracks truly healed, or just carefully covered by effort? He never fully answered it. Maybe that was honest. Maybe that was exactly how it was meant to be. Not the absence of doubt, but the choice to stay in spite of it. The choice to keep showing up, to keep paying attention, to keep noticing the small things. Essie, speaking directly, her voice steady and clear. "We are still working through things. There are nights he wakes up and watches me. I know he does. And some mornings I still carry the weight of what I allowed to happen. Not just to our marriage, but to myself. The emotional distance I allowed to grow. The words I held back for too long. But we choose to stay. Because a lasting relationship is not about never making mistakes. It is not about never drifting. It is about choosing to come back to each other every single day. Even when you are tired. Even when the repair feels slow. We are still working on it, and our story is not over. The screen fades slowly to black. Text appears. They're still trying, and their story isn't over. This story teaches us something quiet and specific. Corey did not lose his marriage in one dramatic night. He lost it one distracted dinner at a time, one at a time, until the woman across from him felt she had to find connection somewhere else because she could not find it at home. If you are in a long-term relationship right now, here is what this story is really asking of you. Not someday, but tonight. Put the phone face down at dinner. Not on silent, face down. Look at your partner and ask one question you genuinely do not know the answer to. Not, how was your day? Something real. What is something you have been thinking about lately that you have not told me? Then stop talking and listen all the way to the end. If you are a grandmother watching your son or grandson pour himself into work while his marriage quietly goes cold, say something. Not a lecture, just this over coffee some afternoon. When did you last ask her what she is still hoping for? And if you are watching this alone tonight, having loved someone faithfully for decades, know that the daily attentiveness Corey finally chose is exactly what you gave for years without being asked. That kind of love does not go unnoticed. Not by the people who mattered. Not by the ones still watching. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. This story was written by a human, with AI as a companion. It was born from a simple wish, to awaken the belief that kindness still exists, and no matter how many trials life brings, there are always moments of justice and quiet miracles waiting.